Doubles and coffee. Well, I laugh till I choke on my doubles, and then the coffee couldn't wash it down. Well, boy, the dead wake up. This is not Netflix. Kamala and the UNC coalition of interest wake up the dead. Transparency Institute start to talk and give Kamala and the UNC suggestions. They were dead and sleeping for 9.5 years. We can't hear them say anything, as there was no procurement, as procurement legislation was gutted by Rowley and Al-Rawi to make it easier to thief money, as institutions were thwarted and hampered by Rowley's oppressive decisions. Independent institutions were warped with Balize juice. A PNM member who preached the gospel of the PNM reached up in President's house. The Transparency Institute said nothing. The DPP office was under attack by Rowley and the Chief Justice. The Transparency International said nothing. Rowley and Smallpin going all over the world, meeting with CEOs face to face and calling that corporate best practice tendering and procurement, cutting deal left, right, and center. And Transparency International said nothing. The former Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi signed a corrupt, illegal indemnity with a man who was a potential witness in a criminal investigation, and Transparency International said nothing. Rowley did not fill out his forms in his integrity in Public Life Act properly, leaving out Aine's Gate property in his Form B, and then having a set of different ink, writing in this, writing in that, with wrong value relative to the stamp value paid, the stamp duty paid. He did not declare that he got a $500,000 discount from one contractor within a 12-month period on that property, and a discount for his daughter. He was the best negotiator to buy real estate. And Transparency International said nothing. Our institutions, the Commissioner of Police, the merit list was thwarted because Rowley lied first and then said, well, it was me. I went by the president and caused her to breach Section 123(4) of the Constitution, and Trinidad and Tobago was without a Commissioner of Police, and then one was selected, and next one selected, and the government extended a contract. And Transparency International said nothing. The previous head of Transparency International, who was vocal during 2010 to 2015, the greatest wicketkeeper in West Indies cricket history, but the worst politician, the most biased PNM, Derek Murray, got promoted after bad talking the UNC and the People's Partnership. Every moment he had diarrhea in the mouth. And then he got promoted by the PNM to a cushy High Commissioner's job in Jamaica. But Transparency Institute was silent. All you feel the Douglas, all you feel Annie Lyon, all you say they would never have the gumption to open their mouth again. Well, let me read for you from the Guardian newspaper. TTTI, which means Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, urges action on whistleblower law, campaign finance, as Trinidad and Tobago prepares for the ceremonial opening of the new parliamentary term tomorrow. The Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, TTTI, is urging the government to prioritize the operationalization of the Whistleblower Protection Act and the advancement of comprehensive campaign finance reform. In a statement issued ahead of the new session of Parliament, TTTI emphasized that effective whistleblower legislation is a cornerstone of good governance. While the Whistleblower Protection Act has been passed and assented to, it remains unenforced. Why it remains unenforced? And doesn't that work hand in hand with procurement legislation that Rowley gutted after Kamala Prasad Bisesa left legislation there to protect our money For 9.5 years, Rowley did nothing, and you said nothing. Transparency International. Who's the head of this organization now? Is Full Narcisscope a part of Transparency International? Full Narcisscope of EBC fame, of Gatsby Dolly, best friend from St. Augustine Girls, is she part of it? I don't know. But I can tell you, Transparency Institute of Trinidad and Tobago, nobody cares. Nobody's listening to you because all of you all have become unmasked, and the population knows what you are, who you are, your immoral, unethical standards, your biased position towards the PNM. So in other words, in the words of the great Sprangalang, the greatest historian, entertainer, and comedian in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, hush all your mouth, Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, because nobody cares because you've been unmasked. It continued, Transparency said. The Institute called for its full implementation, stating that it would empower individuals in both the public and private sectors to report misconduct. So you didn't want misconduct reported when PNM was there, when Rowley was there, when Smallpin was there. When the Auditor General said and reported misconduct to the population, that the Ministry of Finance and the Minister of Finance were pressurizing her, that the Attorney General of the PNM sent a pre-action protocol and did not want to pay for her attorneys, and $3.2 billion was unaccounted for, and then $2.6 billion was unaccounted for, and the Auditor General and independent institution had to go all the way to the Privy Council because the then Minister of Finance wanted to set up a committee, choose the members of the committee, force an investigation, give the tenets of the investigation, give the instructions, the scope of works, give the rules of what to be investigated, and then they were to report to him, the Privy Council, the board out there in England. Say, but what madness is this? How come the Minister of Finance of the PNM is not being investigated? Where were you, Transparency International? Were you earning pay from a PNM contract? Were you on a cushy PNM job? Did you meet in Balize House? As we talk about Balize House, Transparency International, how was that built by a government in charge of state resources? How was that Balize House of $140 million built? You didn't ask to see bills. You didn't ask to see where the money came from. You heard that it was from a raffle. Did that sound logical to you? You heard that it was from 5% of councillors' salaries that were donated to PNM through Balize House. You knew that PNM under Rowley was in $4 million in the red back in 2011, 2012. So how did they come from 4 million in the red to 140 million in the black to build a huge edifice of corruption? You didn't ask. When we were saying that there were contractors who were receiving state contracts, who were there on site, many different contractors bidding, dropping steel, working, dropping materials. You never asked for transparency and accountability as the PNM ran roughshod over this country for 9.5 years, so much so that 102,000 people who voted for PNM in 2020 decided to reject them. The country rejected them. If it was not for the Patriotic Front that was supported by a bareback man. But when that bareback man, there was an investigation into him, and Rowley said, that is my good friend. Yet Rowley stayed in charge of the investigation, in charge of Petrotrin board, fired the board, fired the minister, fired the lawyers, the senior counsel who said to go again to appeal the arbitration. You never said anything, Transparency International. You didn't say, hey, that's not transparent. Rowley, PNM, Stuart Young, Colmin Butt, Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines, Camille Robinson Regis. You stayed silent. Now you're talking. Transparency International continued. They said, TTTI has also reiterated its long-standing call for reform in the political financing, pointing to concerns raised during the April 28 general election by various stakeholders and the CARICOM Observer Group. The Institute stressed that campaign finance reform is essential to ensure that elected officials remain accountable to the public. rather than to financial backers and such reforms. Listen, if I could really test how much the people are laughing at Transparency International now, Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, y'all have to be mad. Y'all think that the population are blithering idiots. We have seen you, Transparency Institute. You are a PNM party group. We do not care what you have to say. You stayed silent. You've lost your ability to speak. So in the words of Sprangalang, hush your mouth. Leave Kamala in peace. Kamala will prepare to run this country with her government, her board members, her people. The whole country is breathing easy. Kamala won an election despite the oppression of the PNM, despite the uneven playing field, despite the PNM using resources, using food card, using projects, using jobs, using houses to try and bribe the people for votes. Kamala won. Kamala won fair and square in a competition that was rigged against her and the UNC. And you, Transparency Institute of Trinidad and Tobago, said nothing. So go back to your normal position. Say nothing, because nobody cares what you have to say. Trinidad and Tobago Transparency International. Nobody even cares what your name is. So to the population, the Dogra not letting them humbug Kamala. Let Kamala do her work. You chose Kamala. You voted for Kamala because Kamala cares. Let Kamala take care of the ills that plague this country. Let Kamala take care of our children. Let Kamala rebuild our country. So Transparency, you're transparent. We've seen straight through your PNM Balize juice bias.